And welcome back. Now, organized crime has surged across Africa since 2019, and this while efforts to combat have actually weakened. That's according to the 2025 Africa Organized Crime Index. Now, the new Africa Crime Index places South Africa as worse than war zone countries, and South Africa featured prominently in the report for its entrenched gangs, rampant fraud, embezzlement, and corruption. Now, the index categorizes mafia-style groups as the most influential in South Africa's organized crime landscape, warning that they exert severe influence and negatively impact both social and state structures. Now, according to the index, South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya have ranked among the top 10 African countries for criminality since 2019. But for more about the report, we're now joined by analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, Rumbi Matamba. Rumbi, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you for having me, Sakina.
So almost all countries in Africa are characterized as having low resilience to organized crime. Please tell us more about that before we delve into anything else.
Thanks, Sakina. So when the index is assessing resilience to organized crime, it's looking at countries' capacities to respond to organized crime, and it does this by looking at a set of 12 indicators which are supposed to encompass a holistic response to organized crime. So these include national laws and policies, as well as judicial responses. It includes civil society, non-state actor responses. It includes governance and transparency indicators, as well as economic regulatory measures as well. Within that, the index has found that international cooperation has been the only resilience indicator to rank higher than the other 11 resilience indicator, which indicates that countries generally tend to cooperate to respond to organized crime, but they don't invest in other measures to respond to organized crime.
So how does the index define organized crime?
So the index defines organized crime as a group of as criminal activities that are conducted by a group of criminal actors for profit.
So with that said, were there any surprises when it came to this report, especially about a country like South Africa?
So the index found some changes in comparison to the previous assessments between 2023 and 2025, which is the latest reporting period. One of the things that comes up, which is quite different from the previous results, is the use of technology in organized crime. What the index finds there is that cyber-enabled and cyber-dependent crimes are on the increase. In fact, South Africa increased its cyber-dependent crime score, which ranks quite highly within the region in comparison to other countries. So the use of technology in facilitating organized crime is one of the changes that has been noted. The other thing that has also been noted by the index is the increase in traditionally non-violent crimes. So things such as financial crimes, for example, fraud, embezzlement, which you brought up earlier, as well as counterfeit goods are also on the increase.
So with the index indicating that South Africa may be worse off than war-torn countries, please explain that, because just in terms of collecting the data, would that not be a factor in that you would have more reports of this in a country like South Africa as opposed to a country that's in the throes of war?
Sakina, you are right, particularly in terms of reporting. One of the things that the index finds is that countries that are considered more democratic than authoritarian countries, for example, tend to have better reporting. This is because of the architects of democracy, where transparency, investigative reporting are tenets of democracy. So that is a factor which we consider within the assessment. But I think it's important to note here, especially with the comparison that you make with war-torn countries, what the index finds is that countries that are assessed to have high criminality tend to have high diversity of criminal markets, which is what we see particularly in the case of South Africa in comparison to Libya, for example. So South Africa has a much more diverse criminal landscape. The criminal markets, the 15 criminal markets within the country rank quite highly in comparison to places such as Libya, for example, which would have high criminal scorings for criminal markets such as human trafficking and human smuggling, for example. So criminality is concentrated within a few criminal markets, whereas in South Africa, criminality is concentrated in a wide range of criminal markets.
So the index, Rumbi, also notes that in South Africa, for example, the foundations of today's organized crime landscape were actually laid decades ago. So please elaborate on that for us and how it's manifesting today.
Thanks, Sakina. So what the index finds is that within South Africa and how we got to the democratic landscape that's seen in South Africa today, there were certain key inflection points that have contributed to the high criminality rates that we see within the country today. If I can use an example of the high level of violence that we see within almost all of the criminal markets within South Africa. All of that has been attributed to earlier levels of violence during the struggle for independence, for example. The other thing is the proliferation of firearms within the country has been contributed as well to the country's efforts to get rid of the apartheid government. So some of those developments inadvertently have contributed to high criminality rates within the country.
So the crime index reveals that efforts to combat organized crime have actually weakened. What is the root cause of that?
What the index finds, especially between 2023 and 2025, is that geopolitical dynamics have played a big role, not only in criminality, but in resilience as well. What the results of the index show, for example, is that countries have now focused more on their national policies and laws indicators, some of their judicial system indicators, some of their governance indicators, which indicates individual responses, national responses to organized crime, as opposed to international cooperation, which, as I mentioned earlier, has been the highest scoring indicator since 2019, but it has stagnated in its growth because of the changing geopolitical dynamics that we see within the different regions and the different countries. The other thing that the index also finds is that non-state actors, and here the index is assessing civil society, the media, and their efforts in combating organized crime. The index assesses that these non-state actor groups are operating within constrained environments, so it is becoming much more difficult to investigate organized crime and report on organized crime related issues, and that has contributed to declines in resilience efforts because non-state actors are often at the forefront of building resilience to organized crime.
So Rumbi, and I've heard people speak to this report in different ways, characterizing the results or the outcomes of this differently. So some people have used this to, for example, say that South Africa is the most corrupt country on the African continent, citing this particular index. Is that a correct reading of what this index is telling us?
No, it isn't, Sakina, especially when we look at the results of the index itself. It finds that state-embedded actors, and which is the indicator that would speak directly to corruption, state-embedded actors have been the highest scoring criminal actor, not only on the continent, but globally. So this is a situation that we see globally where actors embedded within the state are actively involved in co-opting criminality or turning a blind eye to criminality. So it is not a situation that is unique to South Africa or the continent. In fact, the global results show that state-embedded actors contribute the most to high criminality levels across the globe. So that is not a fair assessment, no.
Interesting. Rumbi, thank you so much for sharing some of the results of this index with us. And of course, feel free to go and interact with that. And as I say, it's been interesting, the sort of discussions that have emanated as a result of this report. But Rumbi Matamba is an analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, speaking to us about Africa's Organized Crime Index for 2025 and what that showed us. And this, of course, focuses on organized crime and how it has actually thrived since 2019. And worryingly, perhaps some of the state apparatus that is meant to combat this being weakened over that time. Let us know your thoughts all the same at Morning Live SABC.